Hi, it's Vicky Vice and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a review on the Maybelline Superstay foundation. I've been using this foundation for roughly a week, so in this review I'm going to be telling you how I wore it, how I changed it up during the time I was wearing it to see what worked, what didn't work, what the claims were of the product, and what my final thoughts are of the product. So if you'd like to see that, make sure to keep watching. So I've been using this foundation for roughly a week. I bought it at CVS and the price was $11.99. It's not that bad for a drugstore foundation. There are some that are lower. I know that the Maybelline Fit Me foundation is between $5 and $8 depending on where you buy it, so it's not that bad of a price, especially for foundation. I know that there are some higher end products that can range up to $60 to $70 to $80. So it's not that bad when you think about how much foundations can really be. I've used this foundation with the Wet n Wild mattifying primer. I've also used it with the Maybelline Baby Skin primer, and then finally I used it with the Nivea Post Shave Balm. Now what I will say is I had to set the primer because I normally set my primer just because I'm someone that has much oilier skin right in my T-zone. So right on my nose is where I retain most of the oil on my face. But if you don't have oily skin and that's not really a problem for you, then you can skip the step of trying to powder down your primer. So the next thing I will say is that this foundation is a silicone based foundation. They have water foundations, they have silicone foundations, and then they have oil-based foundations. So what you want to do when you're picking out your primer that goes along with your foundation, you're going to want to see what primers you have that are silicone based. And I can do a full video describing how to know what's silicone based, what's water based, and what's oil based, depending on the active ingredients within the product. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you tell me down below. But I had to use a silicone based primer with the silicone based foundation, so that made it work a little bit better. So just for reference, I have the foundation in my hand and I'm going to be reading off the claims off the back of what it says it does. So it says that it's a full coverage foundation, that has up to 24-hour wear, that it's a seamless matte finish, that it's breathable and comfortable, that it's fade and transfer resistant, that it's oil free and doesn't clog pores. So next I'm going to be going through every claim that it makes. So the first claim is that it's full coverage. I completely agree that this foundation is full coverage. I have never had a foundation that kind of covers everything the way it does, and I do use concealer and I do use color correcting, but I do that with my other foundations and it's never had this full of a coverage. If you can see that, there aren't really a lot of blemishes that you can see, and I do have heavy acne scarring on my cheeks and on my forehead, and I do have hyperpigmentation around my mouth, so it covers it up. It makes everything kind of seamless and it makes it smooth, and the color is even, so that's something I do like, so that's a plus. The next thing that it says it has is up to 24-hour wear. Now, you should not be wearing your foundation for 24 hours. So let me just say that right now. I haven't noticed that it gets sheer throughout the day. It doesn't sheer down, so that's good. But I will say you should not be wearing your foundation for 24 hours. So the next thing it says is that it's fade and transfer resistant. It is fade resistant, but it is not transfer resistant. I have gotten this product on my hands while I was doing my makeup. I've gotten it on my clothes, just changing clothes and stuff like that. I've gotten it on... This stuff gets everywhere. Like, I will say right now, this stuff gets everywhere, and I think that it's because of how pigmented it really is, but the claim that it says that it's transfer resistant is not true. So the next thing is that it's oil free. I actually haven't done an oil test to see if this foundation is oil free, but I will say that if you're someone that's oily, again, I would put a little bit more setting powder on those areas that you get more oily, because it's not really something that's gonna keep your oil at bay. If you're an oily girl, then this might not be the foundation for you, because I'm just someone who has combination skin and I have to blot my skin, I have to set it, and I have to keep reapplying powder. So if you're someone that doesn't like to have to maintain your makeup, you might not want to choose this foundation. Some basic suggestions I would give for using this foundation. I have tried using this foundation with a beauty sponge, and I've tried using it with a makeup brush or a foundation brush. I would say that the brush is probably your best option for applying this foundation. I tried using my Real Technique sponge when using it, and it didn't really do a lot to help the coverage. All it did was kind of sheer out the coverage, and it ate a lot of the product up, which I don't particularly like. I am okay with it if it's a $5 foundation like my Fit Me foundation, but this one's a little bit more expensive, so I want to get all of that product on my face and not have it just sitting inside of my sponge. So the next thing I'll say is you're going to want to use primer. You can, if you're someone that really doesn't like primer and you're fully against it, you think it's ridiculous, then you don't have to wear it. But if you're someone that kind of uses primer more often, or you're a steady primer person, then you're going to want to use primer. And then I am someone, again, that gets oily in my T-zone, so I always set my foundation with powder. You don't have to, but I find that it helps keep the oil down. So you might want to consider doing that if you're going to use this foundation. So finally, I'm going to give my thoughts on the foundation as a whole. I made a pros and cons list. That's the kind of person I am. So I'm going to go through the list. I have it written down right here. So the first pro is that it's very full coverage. I want it to be known that I'm wearing foundation. I'm not someone who's a natural girl, even though it's okay to be a natural girl, but I am also someone that likes full coverage makeup. So this is something that I really like. The next pro that I have is it makes your skin look amazing. It's one of those, it's not a your skin but better foundation, but it's a better skin foundation, if that makes sense. It makes your skin look flawless. It makes it look seamless. It makes it look just bright and just smooth and just nice. It makes your skin look nice. It's not a dewy foundation. It's a very matte foundation. So if you don't like matte foundations, this one, again, might not be for you. The next thing I like about this foundation is it's not heavy feeling. I've had full coverage foundations that made it feel like it was just caking on and settling into your lines and just heavy, and it made your face feel hot and uncomfortable. And that's never good for a foundation, because if you're wearing a foundation, you want to know that you like it and that you feel comfortable in it. And when you're constantly touching all over your face and like, ugh, this feels gross, it doesn't make for a good foundation. So that's something I usually like to skip, and this foundation makes it so that you don't have to have that feeling. So that's also great. The next thing I will say that I like about it, and this is the final thing that I really like about it, is it has a pump. Mine's very dirty, but it's probably because I use it so much, but I love it when foundations have a pump. But my other foundations either have a squeezy or they have the open bottle where you have to pour it out, which I don't like because I like to be able to control the amount of foundation that I'm getting. So that is something I really, really appreciate. Some of the cons that I have for the product is it's not transfer proof. Like I said earlier, it gets everywhere. If you're okay with it getting everywhere, that's fine. I'm okay with it getting everywhere because it gives perfect coverage. But on my shirt that I'm wearing today also, it's around the collar because I blend down to my neck. So if that's something that bothers you, if you don't like getting foundation off of your clothes or off of your stuff, for me, it's not that big of a deal, but if you're someone that doesn't like that, then you're gonna wanna steer clear of this foundation. The biggest struggle and pet peeve that I've had with this foundation is figuring out what to do with my nose. Let me tell you. You can't see it right now, but what would happen is it would separate right on my nose. My oil would start to break through, and it was just bad. It looked like I had freckles. I don't have freckles on my face. Like, I have them on my hands, but I don't have freckles on my face. So it just looked bad. It looked sloppy. It made me kind of wary about using the foundation, which is upsetting because on the rest of my skin, I loved it. It looked fantastic. But on my nose, it just looked gross. And like, I don't want to say it looked gross, but for lack of a better word, it looked gross. So I figured out that setting it with powder would be my best option for using this. And also how I applied my primer made the difference in my skin. I was rubbing too much of that primer on my nose and not spraying it out and patting it in. Sometimes your primer and your foundation can react, and it can cause separation on your skin if you're not blending out your primer properly. I've never had that problem with another product, so this was a first, but I figured out how to use it. So as long as you know how to use it, then I would say it's gonna be okay. So my final thoughts on this foundation. I will say that if you're someone who's more of a beginner with using makeup, that you might wanna steer clear of using this foundation. It gave me, someone who's been using makeup for, I think, 10 plus years. 10 plus? It gave me, someone who's been wearing makeup for 10 years, issues, then it would probably give a beginner a lot of issues. I've used a lot of foundations and I've never had the problems that I've had with this one. But I will say that if you know how to use it and you're willing to test it, see what works for your skin, what doesn't, then I don't know, maybe you're someone that it does work for. But for me, I had to do a lot of testing to see what worked and what didn't. So if you have time to test it, see what works, then it's gonna be good for you. but I will say that for beginners, I don't recommend this foundation. If you're a beginner and you're someone that likes more light coverage, Maybelline has a lot of great foundations for you. The Maybelline Fit Me foundation is one of my favorite foundations of all time, so that's always something that's good for beginners. So my grading scale for whenever I do reviews on my channel is going to be blank out of 5 pineapples. I don't know if you knew, as you can see right here, I love a pineapple. So for this foundation, I will probably give it 3 out of 5 pineapples. Just because it was a little bit harder to wear, it was a little harder to work with. It didn't work with any type of application. So it was a lot of struggling to figure out how it would work for my skin. So with that being said, I will give it 3 pineapples. So I really hope you enjoyed this honest review of the Maybelline Superstay foundation. If you liked the video, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and that you hit the little red bell icon so that you stay alerted to whenever I post a new video. I really do appreciate you coming out and checking out my channel, and I hope that you all have a fantastic day. So that's it. See ya.